This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Do you love NFL football fun and booze? Join us at Thirst and Goal Podcast every Saturday night for weekly NFL coverage, whiskey, bourbon, scotch, and beer reviews. We mix expert football analysis with signature drinks, original segments, and lots of laughs.
Yes, that's right, football fans. Please join us at Thirst and Goal Podcast by heading over to thirstandgoal.buzzsprout.com or search Thirst and Goal on the web. If you're tired of boring podcasts, come join our football party.
Greetings, Dogpound Nation, and welcome to the Two Green Browns podcast with me, Neil Dunworth, today. And we are part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network and also part of the Browns Access Podcast Network. I think you can nearly say at the moment, considering that they have a new podcast piece on their website. So everybody, you can check out our podcast there. You can check out Rob Bloom's podcast. You can check out a multitude of different articles there on Browns Access also. But today, less of Browns Access and more about my guest today. Today, I'm joined by Cory Kinnan from with the first pick. And today, we're going to talk all about draft. And how are you today, Cory?
I'm doing great. A little tired, but I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, and how are you guys faring over there? Obviously, I think the world has pressing matters at the moment with the health scares at the moment and so on. And what seems to be the local kind of I suppose the local kind of take on that from your area, I think we're beginning to take it an awful lot more serious here in Ireland, especially since the weekend. There's been a lot of cases since the weekend. But what's the thoughts on the ground of the coronavirus in the US?
Yeah, Ohio is starting to take it pretty serious too. I live in Columbus, so like Blue Jackets, the hockey team, they have shut down any fans from going to their games, so they'll be playing open stadiums. The governor has basically said nobody in Cleveland or Columbus is allowed to go to sporting events, things like that. So, they're basically turning access off to all those places. So, I think there's 3 cases confirmed in Ohio, but they're being pretty precautious. Yeah,
and I think that's the safest thing to do. I think for my money, that's, we're at the stage in the world now where I think that needs to happen and just get it done with and don't let it run on until September, October, November this year. Like previous instances of flus and SARS and all those things did previously. So just shut the place down. That's because Ireland isn't shut down at all, really. There's been, I think, 3 colleges, 3 universities have closed, but they're talking about closing the schools and stuff. But it's business as normal, and everybody is rushing to get their tin goods and get their little apocalypse shelters and bunkers and stuff like that all stocked up here. But no, it's but it is, I suppose, take the precautions and get it over and done with as quick as possible. And you never know, maybe it won't affect the draft, because, as I say, that's what we're here to talk about. Wouldn't it be an awful shame if they couldn't drive the prospects up in the boat up to the stage like they've planned in this year's draft? Well, they could still do it, but there would be nobody there to see it. That might be
right. I have no idea what they would do. I don't know if they would do it remote, like everybody just phones in their picks, or from their respective war rooms, or what if they had to shut it down. That would be an interesting idea to brainstorm around.
I don't think it would be such a big idea, because they do a lot of remote ones anyway. Like day 3 is nearly all remote. You see it from high schools and from wherever else. You see it from military bases around the world that picks come in and stuff. So it's probably the contingency, I would say, they'd have. And I suppose really the only people that would suffer from it are going to be the neighboring businesses and so on. But it'd be an interesting concept. See what happens if they do have to go down that route. But
absolutely.
So, Cory, tell us a little bit, firstly, I suppose, before we get on to look at the Browns and we look at the Browns draft and so on, tell us a little bit about with the first pick. How did you guys get started with that, and what have you guys got going on there at the moment?
Yeah, so with the first pick is part of the Fan-Sided Network. So I joined the Fan-Sided Network about a year ago, writing at Dog Pound Daily, which is the Browns site. And then worked my way onto an NFL specific site, and then became the editor of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers site. through the Fansided Network, just because it was the first site that came available that needed an editor, and I kind of jumped in and did it. And I did that for about a year. And then their draft site with the first pick became available. And so I asked my boss at through the NFL division at Fansided, like, hey, would you be cool if I transitioned over here? This aligns more with my passion than the Buccaneers do. Like I don't, have any interest really in the Buccaneers. I'm just doing this like editing for you guys. And he's like, yeah, that would work. And so I just transitioned over to their draft site with thefirstpick.com. And it's kind of taken off, and I've really enjoyed it every step of the way. And I've been on that site for probably since like November. I've been doing draft work this is my third year doing draft work now. So it's cool that I finally have a site to like publish all of that draft work onto now as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see it, because even if you go on to With the First Pick, if you go onto the Twitter page, or you go onto the website, there's just tons and tons and tons of information there. You'd never be stuck for any light reading if on any commutes or anything like that. And even last week, I picked up one of your articles that you had. Actually, yeah, it was your article. It was one that you did, and there was kind of like 5 people that the Browns should take a look at in this draft, and it was really interesting, to kind of see the layers of information that you kind of put with it. So well done on that. That was a fantastic article, and it's definitely one that that I would recommend if anybody is listening to this and they haven't checked it out. Definitely have a look at it, because it wasn't your regular run of the mill, draft a tackle, draft a safety kind of a thing. It was a bit more layered and a bit more nuanced than that. So I really enjoyed it. But yeah, so I suppose really looking at the Browns up and coming draft, I kind of maybe just answered the question there really. But there are a lot of holes to fill, and there's probably one more hole, there's definitely one more hole to fill that I didn't envisage us having to fill at the start of the season, and that would have been linebacker. But with all the rest of the holes that the Browns have, what would, like, if you were to rank kind of the areas that you would be attacking first and foremost, I suppose from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, what would your rankings for the areas that you would like to see the Browns attack?
Good question. I think obviously first and foremost, number one, the big glaring one is offensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they can leave the first round without grabbing an offensive tackle, and I don't think they can leave the 10th overall pick without grabbing a tackle. If they get to the 10th pick and 3 of those big 4 names of Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills, Andrew Thomas, or Tristan Wirfs are off the board, and there's only one left at 10, I don't think there's really any way that I could justify them trading back, just because one of those 4 guys are what they need to add.
Mm-hmm.
The drop off from tier 2 to like Josh Jones, those guys is steep. So I think one of those 4 guys they need to land, and they absolutely can land one at 10. If 2 are on the board by 10, I could envision that they might be able to trade back to 13, 14, 15, somewhere around in that range. So only back a few spots and still landed one of those 4 guys. But I would say tackle is the biggest need. Secondly, I would say safety would be my number 2. Demarius Randall, not coming back. He definitely ended his relationship with the Browns on kind of tumultuous terms. I don't think either party has interest in re-signing in Cleveland. And then Jermaine Whitehead, obviously, death threats via social media halfway through the year and cut. So they don't really have any safeties coming back. I like Justin Burris. I think he could be a quality depth piece. Is he a guy that I think should be penned in as a starter? No. So I think you need to come away with 2 safeties in either free agency or the draft or. Thirdly, I would say would be a nickel specific player. So in the past years, we've had like Breon Body Calhoun. Last year, we had Eric Murray before he got hurt, kind of held down that nickel position in an increasingly pass-heavy league that the NFL is transitioning to, especially in the AFC North, where you got Lamar Jackson twice a year. The more speed you can have on the field without compromising some sort of support in the run game is going to be essential. And so one of those nickel safety hybrids is probably number 3 for me. 4, I would say interior defensive line depth. They have Sheldon Richardson and Larry Ogunjobi. Ogunjobi took a step back last year, which is kind of alarming, and hopefully he can get it together. It's his contract year, new coaching staff, so hopefully he can put together a solid year this year and bounce back. But really behind those 2 guys, if either of those 2 guys have to come off the field, it's been a glaring hole in Cleveland, and the drop off of level of play at the defensive line position takes a dramatic hit if either of those two have to come off the field for a breather or for an injury. So definitely getting some depth on the defensive line. And then 5, I'll put linebacker at 5. I mean, Joe Schobert leaving is a big hit to the Browns. Christian Kirksey getting cut, everybody knew that was coming. They have Mac Wilson, they have Sione Takitaki. As much as people want to say Mac Wilson was a stud last year, I think he struggled in a variety of ways in his rookie year, which he's a 5th-round pick and he's a rookie, could be expected, but he's nowhere near, I think, even pending to be a starter. So I would say linebacker would be number 5 for me.
Yeah, it would be that, and maybe I suppose 4 weeks ago we wouldn't have thought that would be so high on our list. Maybe we might have thought it would be a case of bringing in a role player as a free agent or something like that. But now it does kind of jump up the list a small bit for linebacker. You mentioned something there, Cory, that the offensive tackles, and obviously there does seem to be a hierarchy of a top 4 and then the rest and so on. And there's obviously some sleepers and some guys that some draftniks are very, very high on and so on. But I suppose we can concentrate on the top 4. Obviously, a lot of it is scheme dependent, and you see that maybe guys like Dane Brugler and so on, like Jedrick Wills at the top of the list, and then Pete Smith over at SI loves Tristan Wirfs, and then you've got various other people who love Mekhi Becton and so on. Where do you come down on that? Who would be your number 1 tackle in this draft?
So my number 1 tackle in this draft class is still Andrew Thomas. I've liked Andrew Thomas from day one. And while scheme specific for the Browns, he might not be the guy that I would put number 1, but I'd still probably put him at 2 for the Browns. Tristan Wirfs would obviously be the ideal fit for the Browns, just because of his lateral mobility and the speed and agility that he plays with to get outside of the boundary in a wide zone or get up to the second level. But Andrew Thomas has a good deal of athleticism as well. And I think just overall, with his footwork, with his hand, with his pass set, with his ability to read a zone blocking scheme in pass pro even, and to be able to switch off to a guy like a delayed rush coming into his zone off the edge. I just think Andrew Thomas is the most complete, well-rounded of the tackle prospects. So I would put him at number 1.
That's you know what, you read my mind as well, and that's something that I said to you when I might have said it to you actually when I was DMing you and asking you would you come on. I was there. Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat as you. Andrew Thomas would be my number 1. He has been my number 1 through the whole lot of the process. Tristan Wirfs obviously had the athletic piece. His combine didn't change anything for me, obviously, because it was clear that he could move. It was clear he could lift weights. If you any research on him, you could see that he had broken all the powerlifting records at Iowa and so on. And then I suppose Mekhi Becton, everybody was expecting him to run fast and so on. He didn't do much. I'm still not convinced by Becton. He is a freak of nature, but I keep on going back to the fact that, yes, he did run a 5.1, but he ended up with the world's biggest ice pack on his hamstring afterwards. And if the concern for me is that he has that his body will deteriorate or break down or something like that, if he does have to hit full tilt quite a lot, this didn't answer any question for me. Would I pick him? I probably would still pick him. Like, the upside is there; it's huge, and I'm no sports scientist, but and I'm sure that the medicals and stuff like that will check out. But I just hated seeing that ice pack, and if it was if it was needed or if it was just for a prop, just so he didn't have to do the rest of the workouts, I'd like to know a small bit more about that, really. And then Jedrick Wills, I think, is going to be a fantastic tackle for somebody. I just don't think he's going to be a fantastic tackle for the Browns, because he is probably the one that is maybe that small bit far removed from what they actually need, being a right tackle and obviously protecting to his blind side. I think, and Brugler is huge on him moving over to the left side, and yes, that may very well be the case. But I just think with the athleticism of Wirfs moving him over to the left side, if we were to bring him in, and playing the wide zone, might just be an easier piece for him. And they would be kind of my top 4, and I suppose the rankings are the hierarchy. But if we got Andrew Thomas, I would literally swing from the chandeliers here at home. It would be absolutely fantastic, and I would be delighted to see that as our first pick, as you said. And then you mentioned that there is a kind of a drop off, and there is a clear drop off. And you mentioned the Josh Jones and the likes. With the propensity for Andrew Berry, well, with the propensity that previous regimes that Andrew Berry has been involved in and their propensity to trade down, do you think that this is a gamble worth taking, or that, it may just be, you may be kind of putting yourself in hot water very early on in the draft and kind of crossing your fingers and hoping more so than anything else if you were to trade down? Is that something that you would even consider?
That's a tough question. I think I would consider it if multiple of those four were still on the board and if they weren't trading down very far.
Hmm.
I've heard some rumors, read some articles about their love for Ezra Cleveland, and his athletic profile fits the bill for an analytical mindset. But that would be early second round, late first round. And while Ezra Cleveland does have that athletic profile, Josh Jones might have that athletic profile. I don't think either of those guys should be day one starters. These top four guys are guys who can be day one starters. So if you're trading down and taking a Josh Jones, taking an Austin Jackson, taking a Ezra Cleveland, you're taking them with the idea that they're going to start day one, and they will start day one. But I don't think that you're going to see the on-field success you would be had you stayed at 10 and taken one of the top four guys.
Interesting. Ezra Cleveland. The three offensive tackles that I wrote pieces on first were Tristan Wirfs, Ezra Cleveland, and Jack Driscoll. And the reason I did that is I wanted to write about Wirfs because I'd heard so much about him, and I wanted to see both himself and Alaric Jackson together. And then just coming down through the names of players, and this is in early November, I said, Ezra Cleveland, why not? He might be a Brown. It might be fantastic. I'll write it on him. And I went, geez, this guy is actually he's really proficient as a left tackle at college, at the college grade. And I basically I was very kind of glowing in my writing on him, but I didn't release it until mid to late January. And at that stage, I'd kind of flip-flopped on the idea of him maybe becoming a guard, and it was pre-combine. But and then Jack Driscoll, I just love Jack Driscoll. I just think that he is, if I was a foot taller, I'd like to be Jack Driscoll. I think I'd probably end up something along the lines of Jack Driscoll. He's just unorthodox in his ways. He's just a big barrel of a man, and I just like him. I'd love if the Browns picked him up as a late draft pick. But I get where I know what you're saying about Josh Jones and Ezra Cleveland and so on. And there's one other name as well that I'd like to pick your brains on, and he's kind of the forgotten man in this. You hear there's obviously people who've been injured, and you hear people like Lucas Niang is getting a bit of a push now as well, another guy that looks really good on tape. And I know Stephen Thomas from Browns Mock Daily is big on Niang. But Prince Tega Wanega, he seems to be kind of the forgotten man since he turned up to the Senior Bowl, interviewed, found out that he had a swelling in his knee, and he just seems to be kind of dropping down boards slightly. There's something there with him. But do teams take a chance? When do teams take a chance in him, I suppose, is the question. And what would your take on Prince be?
So on Prince Tega Wanogho, I watched him probably October. I went back in November and then in December. You can see the progress that he's making. You can see his athleticism, even if he hasn't been able to show anything on the track or test at the combine. But overall, I think he's really raw still. I mean, he's new to the sport of football. Didn't really play much until late high school, I think, is when he started playing football. I mean, he's massive and he's athletic, but just the way he uses his hand placement isn't great. You see a lot of reps where he whiffs, trying to get his hands on guys. You see his footwork is inconsistent on a play-to-play basis. And as a redshirt senior, you can see, the athletic traits are there. I could see why a team would want to take a chance on him. But a guy who's not that polished, how early do you take a chance on him? It would be a different story if maybe he was a redshirt sophomore. But 2 years older, still not quite there. I think he would be a good third-round guy, late second-round guy. But I wouldn't feel comfortable in the top 40 picking Tega Wanogho.
And I think, you know what, usually you say to people, or you say about prospects that, maybe an injury was a blessing in disguise for them, so it allowed them to rocket up. So maybe let's just say somebody ahead of them got injured and they fell, and then this other prospect rocketed up aboard. I think for Prince Tega Winogo, I think had he not been injured, I think teams would have wanted to maybe take him, and they would have convinced themselves to take him in the mid to late 20s. I think in the first round, that would probably be his ceiling for me. Looking at him on tape, I thought that's where the NFL would see him and would take him, because he's just a Hulk. He's just fantastic size, and he is moldable, and sometimes not having bad habits all the way through. Well, I'm not going to say not having bad habits, because he's, as you mentioned, his technique isn't there. But having bad habits for a less amount of time, I think a lot of NFL coaches might see that as a positive as well, considering that you can't teach the physicality that he has. But like when I was looking at him, you could see that he never really got his hand. He doesn't get his hands fully extended. They don't place in the right position, so he doesn't get them extended, and they look wobbly. But I thought his footwork was okay, and as you mentioned, it's inconsistent, and when he's trying to recover, it's a small bit inconsistent. But remember, I think when he played against LSU, he did a pretty good job on Chase Arm. But as I say, that was one of 5 or 6 games that I'd watched. But when he'd try and recover against speed rushers, I think that there was a bit of an issue with him. But I would be absolutely delighted to take him round 4 maybe, or that kind of area, maybe late round 3, round 4 or so. But I think his injury has probably shot any chance he has of going in the second round at this stage. But massive upside, I think, for me anyway. Absolutely massive upside for him, and he will definitely be an NFL player come September, provided his knee is okay, provided it isn't an arthritic knee and so on. But so it is a generational. Well, I hate using that word, and I shouldn't use that word. I don't think anybody should use that word, because in 2014 they said it was a generational wide receiver class, and you see an awful lot of those first rounders kind of are just plodding along in their careers at the moment, So I don't want to jinx anybody, especially with the offensive line. But it is a better than normal offensive line class, and I think that the Browns should be able to come out of there with 2. I think it's fair to say they probably will take 2. Would you be surprised if they didn't take 2 in the draft?
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't take 2, but considering the market rate of offensive tackles in free agency, how much money they'd have to spend to get a quality tackle in free agency, it would make sense to get 2 on a rookie contract rather than buy 1 in free agency and draft 1 in the draft. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, but I would be surprised if they did as well.
And we still have Chris Hubbard. Chris Hubbard hasn't got anywhere yet. I don't know what I don't know. Maybe they see something in him. Maybe his game will suit the wide zone an awful lot more, and maybe Bill Callahan thinks that he can get a tune out of him more so than Campen could last year. But at the moment, we still have 2 veteran presence in the form of Kendall Lamb and Chris Hubbard at the moment. So until Chris Hubbard is gone, is there any need to look at any right tackles and so on like that? Well, there is a need. We know there's a need to look at it, considering Hubbard's play last year was definitely not of a professional level in some games. But I wouldn't be for the Jack Conklin signings and so on like that. Maybe pick up the free agent tackle from Minnesota, the swing tackle there. But then again, do you risk having Chris Hubbard Mark II, considering Chris Hubbard was the Rashard Hill of Pittsburgh when Todd Haley came in? So, do we get that lesser experienced swing tackle, bring him in slightly undersized, and then see if he can go? It's a gamble, but I think that maybe that might be something they might look at as well. But I would be all for them taking 2 in this class and seeing what pans out. And if they don't pan out, maybe Forbes steps up, maybe Kendall Lamb becomes your starter, and so on. So there are options, I think, and I think they need to give themselves options in the O-line this year, because it was glaringly obvious last year that they didn't have options. The options that they were bringing in were McRae, and then obviously Wyatt Teller came in to replace Cush as right guard. Actually, just as an aside, how do you feel about Wyatt Teller going into this season?
I like Wyatt Teller a good deal. I don't think they should go into the season without competition for him, just assuming he's the starter. But I like Wyatt Teller, and I see the potential there. I mean, he's only entering his 3rd year in the league. His athletic profile fits the bill. he had a pretty good rookie season in Buffalo, and they got him for cheap. And if he doesn't work out, I mean, they got him for cheap, and they don't owe him any guaranteed money. But overall, I think Wyatt Teller has a promising career ahead of him, and definitely would be probably penciled in right now at right guard if I had to assume. I think Drew Forbes is probably also going to get a shot at right guard, but I don't have anything against Wyatt Teller, and there's definitely no reason he shouldn't be on the roster entering 2020.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I feel about it as well. But then again, if there was a Netani Muti in the were their second, third round pick, I think it'd be very difficult not to take somebody like that. Injury concerns aside and everything like that, just the raw strength and power of a guard like that. But then again, if I was GM, that would mean I would have taken. That would be my third lineman out of 4 picks, and I think that there would be a couple of people in Northeast Ohio scratching their head if I was GM. But I would find it difficult not to pick up somebody like Muti if there was a fall on that due to his injury concerns.
Oh, absolutely. I think Muti has like first round tape. When I do an eval, I don't take injuries into consideration when I give them a film grade, and he was right on the fringe of a first, second round pick. So I have graded it right now as an early second round pick, but again, his injury concerns are probably going to drop him a little bit more. But he's definitely got it, and eating a 10 by 10 from In-N-Out, that's pretty impressive too. So,
Yeah, considering the portion sizes that we have over here in Ireland, I would say anybody in Ireland that's listening to this, Google it. I had to Google it. I've never seen a 10 by 10 in and out, but Jesus, was I impressed. I wouldn't be taking this guy on at all in any eating competitions. That is for sure. Absolutely. But yeah, it was very, very impressive. And there's a lot to be said for, for, I suppose, the people of Polynesian descent and so on like that, of coming into the league and so on. We see it an awful lot here in rugby, which we would see an awful lot of players that would move to Europe. They're just the physical makeup of these guys is just unbelievably impressive, and you even see it in the WWE that these guys are just powerful men. And they're just specimens and absolute wonders to behold. So, the more of those guys that you got pushing things up front, I think better. Because they don't tend to leave. They don't tend to leave the side down at all. They're fantastic specimens. So that's really the offensive line covered between the two of us. I think we get it. We get an A+ on that one.
I would agree.
And whoever we're going to pick there. But then again, especially, speaking for myself, not for you, you're not more versed in the draft. A blind squirrel can find a nut on my side at any stage. So, I'm not going to claim to be any great genius with it. I started picking it up this year. Not picking it up. I've been watching the draft and so on, but I just started writing down my own feelings on it this year and doing tape study and so on. I must have literally, I was to put up about 5,000 or 6,000 views on Duke Manyweather and LaCharles Bentley's YouTube channels, just trying to figure it out, and I just enjoy it. And I know some people it's a chore to look at the O-line, but I actually enjoyed it. It's, for me, it was a lot easier to see stuff than it was to see like a wide receiver. If a wide receiver catches it, that's a fantastic catch. It doesn't take much. It doesn't. There isn't much nuance to it. Well, there is, but it's a lot easier to see on tape. But I liked rewinding and pressing play and rewinding, pressing play, see where the feet were, see what the kick step was, see how far he went out. Did he leave any gaps through the middle or whatever where his hands went? And for somebody who's never played the game, and I've never played the game of American football, this is a great education for me and a great kind of piece for me to be able to look at and say, right, now I know the nuance of one of the most important tactics within the game is offensive line play. And now when you get to study it and get to know it, I actually find a great sense of achievement, because you take for granted the big guys up front sometimes and what they do.
I find offensive line play fascinating. I really do. I think it's probably one of the more nuanced positions, if we're being completely honest. Just the level of savviness at every part of the body, from the eyes to the hands to the feet to the hips to the waist. There's just a lot to keep an eye on with offensive linemen, and so I really enjoy watching offensive linemen as well.
Mm. It's yeah, as I said, I'll definitely keep it up. I'll definitely look at it for next year. And even when you are looking at it, started to leach into the tight ends. There's a couple of tight ends I thought were very good coming out next year. There's a guy from Washington State, not from Washington State, from Washington, Cade Otton. I thought he jumped off the tape an awful lot better than Hunter Bryant this year, who I'm not a really huge fan of in the tight end room. But yeah, that's a complete aside there. But yeah, it's interesting to see how it all works as one unit, as opposed to the ball goes back to the quarterback. Yes, he's hoping he's got the autonomy to make scramble plays and so on if needs be, but that offensive line has to work together, and that's fascinating. That's initially what drew me to the game of American football 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago nearly now at this stage. And it is definitely the nuts and bolts of the game, I think. So we fixed the offensive line for the Cleveland Browns. Are there any sleepers in maybe later rounds that you would and thinking about your the article that you had a couple of safeties. I think Burgess from Utah you were pretty high on, and Strobridge, the defensive lineman as well. Any other kind of sleepers that you would have that maybe pencil in the later rounds for the Browns?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me take a look here. So yeah, I do love Terrell Burgess. He is a safety for Utah, but he fits that nickel mold really well that I was mentioning earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He can play down the nickel. He shows good versatility to play man and zone. So I think he would be a good fit. He reminds me of Eric Murray, to be honest, when I watch his tape. He's in that same kind of hybrid role. Let's see. If we're looking at running backs, potentially if Kareem Hunt, they said they're going to tender him. So if a team's willing to match his tender, and then he finds himself playing football elsewhere next year, I do like Anthony McFarland from the University of Maryland. I think he would be a good late day 3, early day 4 guy at the running back position to keep an eye on. Linebackers, he's not really a sleeper anymore, but I do really love I'm sorry, I'm blanking for a second. Akeem Davis Gaither. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Akeem Davis Gaither from Appalachian State. I think he plays all over the field. He plays with his hair on fire. He's very instinctual, athletic, kind of undersized, but that plays to his advantage. So I like him. You mentioned Jason Strobridge, North Carolina defensive lineman. I don't really know what position Jason Strobridge plays, and that's a good thing when considering defensive line depth. He can play out wide at the 7 or the 5 tech. He can play inside at the 3 tech. You're probably not going to play him over the center, but he can move all around the defensive line, and I think that's an asset at the next level, especially for a team like the Browns, who at edge and at defensive tackle don't have a ton of depth behind their starters. And so I like him a good deal. And then one offensive lineman that I'll name, he's from the University of Kansas. His name is Akeem Adeniji. So he's kind of undersized at the tackle position, comes in at like 295 pounds or just over 300 pounds, 6'4". So he's a little bit on the smaller side, played left tackle at Kansas. But I think that's more out of necessity than like him wanting to play there. But went to the Senior Bowl and played guard the entire week at the Senior Bowl and looked natural at guard as well. So I think he could be a good fit if they are looking to add a guard or a potential swing tackle, a depth piece who they could plug and play along the offensive line. Should an injury happen or subpar play happen, I think Akeem Adeniji is a name to watch as well.
Yeah, he's somebody that I watched too. He's nice and athletic. As you say, he pushed into guard, and I think if I remember rightly, he's supposed to be unbelievably intelligent as well, as in like academically intelligent too, which is, obviously that's an intangible that you can't write that down anywhere and say it's going to transfer onto the field. But when you see guys like JC Tretter and other guys like that are in that line as well, intelligence will fit in within the line too. And I just like to think from a cultural standpoint that he would be a superb pickup too, considering all the bits and pieces that he does bring with him. But no, that's a fantastic roundup. Akeem Davis Gaither, is that his name?
Yes.
I can never remember whether it's Gaither Davis or Davis Gaither or Gathers or whatever it is. But he looks very, very mobile. Jordan Brooks from Texas Tech is just he's an animal, and Troy Dye as well from Oregon. They're two linebackers that it just popped off tape when I was watching tape for me, and I think that they would be fantastic. But Akeem Davis Gaither is, yeah, he's somebody that I would actually very much love to see at the Browns too as well. So that's been fantastic, Cory. Thank you so much for your time, and for everybody that's listening to the podcast. I completely got the time wrong, so I really need to apologize live on air to Cory. I mixed up my times between Eastern Standard Time and GMT. So Cory was very, very nice to wait on that extra hour for me, and still give me the time for the interview. So I do really appreciate that, Cory. But so Cory,
yeah, absolutely no problem at all.
Thanks a million. But just before I let you go, do you want to just plug all your stuff, anything you got coming out on with the first pick coming up in the next week or so?
Yeah, so again, I am the site editor for withthefirstpick.com. On there, we try to do a whole variety of things. So team-specific needs. So we have writers who are fans of all teams that they'll cover, like 5 ideal prospects, mock drafts, redrafts from past drafts, just for fun. Also scouting reports. We try to hit the scouting reports pretty hard. I'm actually starting to transition to 2021 prospects at this point, just because I feel like my team's got the 40 some days left kind of wrapped up on my site. So I'm going to start moving forward to scouting reports for 2021. Also in 2021, I hope to drop a draft guide. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. So we'll see how that goes, but I think I have the report layout and everything like that good to go. So that's something to potentially keep an eye on as well.
Lots of work ahead. Lots of sleepless nights and big cups of coffee ahead. So if you're going doing a draft guide.
Absolutely. Yes, it is a ton of work. But again, 2 prospects down in 2021 already. So we're chugging along.
Exactly. Well, listen, Cory, thank you so much for popping through. It was really, real pleasure to speak to you. And if anybody isn't already following on with the first pick on Twitter, please do. I'm actually going to link that article that you did with 5 prospects that the Browns should look for as well to the podcast. So if anybody hasn't read it, you'll be able to read it there as well. It is it's a fantastic read through of some of the good guys that Cory feels that the Browns should pick up too. So once again, Cory, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again after the draft.
That sounds great. Anytime.
Thanks once again to Cory for popping on to have a quick chat about this up-and-coming draft with regards to the Browns. So if everybody could give him a follow on Twitter and give With the First Pick a follow on Twitter also, it would be fantastic. Make sure you follow the show here on @2GreenBrowns. Make sure you follow my co-host John Cahill on @JohnCahill_IRL. And give us a like, give us 5 stars, whatever you like. Subscribe to us on any of your podcast partners as well. That would be fantastic. Also, if you could check out any of the great stuff on Browns Access, give them a follow on Browns Access as well. That would be superb too. So until next time, go Brownies!